24 years is a long time. I'll be happy when I finally walk out the gate.
When I got out of prison, I was happy to be getting out, but you start hitting all these roadblocks.
The stigma of who you were never leaves.
For years, I've been told society hates you.
It's like having a scarlet letter. There's an X for employers, getting housing.
Why are you going to deny a person basic civil rights for making poor choices in the past?
The first month, I slept with this big old knife under my pillow because of the fear.
You demand that we serve our time, become corrected, and come out better than when we came in.
You know, stuff happens, but it's how we respond to what happens.
If we're given the tools to be able to change, we will change.
I know that I was wrong. It didn't just affect me, it affected a lot of people.
I hurt my family very badly. I have a lot of work to do to make things right.
You got to focus on never proving yourself to them, but always knowing who you are.
You're talking about restoring people to civility. That is a big task.
This is my new beginning.
Hello and welcome to the Renee Crown Public Media Center, home of WTTW and WFMT. My name is Sandra Cordova-Misek, President and CEO of WTTW and WFMT. What you just saw is a trailer from the upcoming documentary series, Firsthand: Life After Prison. One element of WTTW's award-winning, firsthand, multi-platform, multi-year initiative, now in its 5th year. After exploring gun violence, the pandemic, poverty, and segregation, in 2023, we'll focus on the firsthand experiences of people who face sometimes seemingly insurmountable barriers as they restart their lives after leaving prison. Our coverage will offer glimpses into solutions, in some cases offered by the returning men and women themselves, as they navigate the post-incarceration world while carrying the stigma of a criminal record. We'll do this through a series of documentaries, expert talks, a discussion guide, community engagement in partnership with Illinois Humanities Envisioning Justice Initiative, and text and visual journalism in partnership with WTTW News, Injustice Watch, and the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Lab. I hope you'll check out all of this content on the project website at wttw.com/firsthand. And tonight, we'll kick off this year of exploration with our WTTW News special at 10 p.m. on WTTW. Now, tonight, you will have the opportunity to preview sections from the Firsthand documentaries and get to know our Firsthand producer-director, Mario Tharpe, who will moderate what I'm sure will be a powerful conversation on the issue of reentry. With more than 25 years of filmmaking experience, Mario is a storyteller who searches for the emotional soul of every story. Among his many credits, Mario wrote, directed, and produced Fighting on Both Fronts, the story of the 370th, the remarkable but little-known story of one of the only few African-American regiments, a group of men largely from Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood to have fought in combat during World War I. Mario's documentary aired on WTTW in 2017, and you can watch it on WTTW.com. So now, before we get the evening started, a quick thanks. Lead support for Firsthand: Life After Prison is provided by Ann and Rich Carr, with additional support by the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation, the Leo Krupa Trust, Denny and Sandy Cummings, and the Mark and Janine Malnati Family Foundation. So now, without further ado, please welcome Mario Tharpe. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you. So I guess I should have asked this question first. Am I able to stand up, or do I have to sit this entire time? Because I like to move around. And if I hear the director yelling at me, that means I can't get up. Yep, I can't get up. All right. So, hello, everybody. Good evening. What did you all think of the promo? Yeah? Let me tell you, you all are in for a great evening. I'm going to try my best to keep us on schedule so we can get you all out of here by 7:15, maybe 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock. No, joking. We're going to try and stay on schedule. The one thing I want to do first is make sure that everyone understands that the 5 stories and the talks, which we will discuss later, it's streaming, right? So don't flip the channel thinking you're going to go to channel 11 and watch it. It's a streaming program, right? So I'm going to say this, and I'll do it occasionally throughout the evening to make sure we all understand. So it's WTTW.com/firsthand. You all say that for me? WTTW.com/firsthand. That's very important because that's how you're going to see this work, is WTTW.com/firsthand. All right. I'm going to try and be quiet for most of the time, which will probably be hard for me, because we really want to hear these stories. These are the people that we need to hear from, not me, folks here. So what I want to do is I want to start off by making an introduction, and I'll give everybody a little bit of a background on each one of the individuals. Let me say that the first 3 folks, Tawana, Nicholas, and Paul, are all the 3 of the 5 subjects of the stories that we're telling, all right? And Nneka is one of the experts who's involved in the talk. I like to call them TED Talks, but basically the same thing, but they're called firsthand talks, all right? So let's start with Tawana. Tawana Pope, a West Garfield native, who during her early adult years struggled with drug addiction, homelessness, and prostitution. After her last stint in jail, she made a decision to change her life. Now an ordained minister, author, and director of her own nonprofit organization, she is giving hope for many former and currently incarcerated people. All right? Nicholas Crayton. In October of 2022, Nicholas was released from Kewanee Life Skills Reentry Center in Kewanee, Illinois, after serving 24 years in a number of Illinois prisons. We followed Nicholas as he walked through the prison gates and started the next chapter of his life. While he set his sights on launching his own tech company, the challenges of adapting to life outside have proven harder than he has imagined. All right, Paul S. Paul served 15 and a half years in prison for a sex crime. His challenges include the prohibitions or the restrictions placed on sex offenders, as the stigma that once a sex offender and always a sex offender. He's determined to move forward with his life, and he's found religion and true love as he's moved. You all will find out later about the true love. It's a very unique story. Nneka Jones Tapia. She told me earlier it's like tap dancing. So Tapia is managing director, Justice Initiatives at Chicago Beyond, and an experienced psychologist who is passionate about mental wellness, criminal justice reform, and supporting young people who have experienced trauma. She also wanted to make sure that I said that she's a former warden at Cook County Jail. All right? So welcome, welcome, welcome. Before we start, I would like to take a look at 2 stats, which will lead us into our discussion. The first one is, and this is the source for this is the Illinois Department of Corrections from June of 2022. The total population in Illinois Department of Corrections inmates is 29,245. Now remember, this is in June, so numbers have changed. And actually, unfortunately, I think they've gone up based on what I've been hearing. Male population, 27,881, and female population is 1,364. And the second stat I would like to look at is the recidivism rate. In the U.S., it is said that 44% of inmates return, or people return within the first year. In Illinois, 17% return within the first year. Within 3 years, 43% return. And this is a staggering amount to me, is that the cost to Illinois taxpayers is $13 billion over 5 years. Need we say more, right? I mean, I think that alone is just one of the reasons why we should be trying to find an answer to this solution. I mean, an answer to this issue. So what I would like to do, as I put these cue cards back in my pocket, is I would like to talk about Kewanee. Because I think when we talk about recidivism, we're looking for ways to help lower those numbers. And part of our research and the stories that we produced, we were able to pay a visit into Kewanee Life Skills Center. Before we go to here, I'm going to read to you all what Kewanee is. So, according to Illinois Department of Corrections, the Kewanee Life Skills Reentry Center is a supervised transitional facility for male inmates who are at the end of their sentence with the Illinois Department of Corrections. The facility opened in 2017 and is located in Kewanee, Illinois. It can house a maximum of 682 inmates who are preparing to re-enter society. The main objective of Kewanee Life Skills Reentry Center is to help the inmates build valuable life skills and prepare them for re-entry into society while maintaining safety and security. The center focuses on offenders who are ready to make needed changes in order to successfully reintegrate into their community. They must have 1 to 4 years left on their sentence and qualify for placement at the facility. Kewanee Life Skills Reentry Center offers educational, job readiness, and cognitive behavior therapy courses. Now, I've said that. Let's take about a minute and a half and watch a clip that features Nicholas and gives you a little bit more information about Kewanee.
Kewanee is classified as a life skills reentry center. But a lot of people don't really understand what that entails. You're thinking maybe career, maybe a skill set, but it's more than that, because you're talking about restoring people to civility, to citizenship. That is a big task. Because you have to take everybody here and look at us on an individual level and say, okay, what is it that was problematic that got you here? What is it that caused you to do what you did to end up into this place?
Yes. Bro, I gotta finish Joe's resume, man.
And so for everybody, it's like helping everybody else.
What's your official position title?
It's not just staff helping us.
Welder/painter.
He does the same thing.
Joe is,
We have to help one another.
I would put Joe as more of a fabricator.
Like, we host a lot of peer-led groups because everybody's not comfortable with talking about their problems, their addictions, being vulnerable.
Okay. All right. I think Nicholas is going to get me later. He's giving me that eye. So that gives us a very short overview as to a little bit about Kewanee. Let me say this before we start this discussion. We were fortunate enough, and I've said this a few times on the radio, but I am extremely happy that we were able to get access to Kewanee. Dan and I, we were trying to debate, executive producer Dan Protest. We were trying to decide if we should hold off because it was taking time. I mean, as you know, dealing with a facility like Kewanee or IDOC, it does take time to get things approved. And we were trying to decide if we should wait and move forward because we had a schedule to stick to, or if we should just hang on and wait for Kewanee. Well, I am happy that we waited because Nicholas's story and his facility are amazing. So I'm gonna just pose the question. So what we're leading to with watching this clip is whether or not facilities like Kewanee are helping. Should there be more places like Kewanee out here? Will that help to cut down on a recidivism rate? So I would like to start with you, Nicholas. I'm already in trouble with you, so why not start with you? Talk to us a little bit about your experience of being in Kewanee and whether or not you feel like it was beneficial, and should there be more facilities like Kewanee?
Yeah, I'll see you later. I won't make this too long because Teresa, my director, already says I'm long-winded. So, yeah, the Kewanee experiment, first off, let me say it was necessary for me to go through something like this to become acclimated. A lot of people want to give me credit for the things that I've done. Full disclosure, tomorrow will be my 4th month that I've been free. And so, for me, it feels kind of weird because I'm just doing everything that I said I was going to do on this side of the fence, so I don't feel like I'm doing anything extraordinary. I'm just rebuilding a life. And so the Kewanee project, it helped me understand that without it, I really wasn't where I thought I was. Intellectually, I've always been doing great. I've always studied, I've always read books, I always forced myself to get educated while I was incarcerated, in spite of or despite Department of Corrections' will to help us do so. But when I got to Kewanee, and this is a funny story, but you all take this for granted, I was given a job in employee commissary. Okay, that's fine, I run a cash register, I sell goods to the staff. But the added bonus was I had to answer a phone. Now in Department of Corrections, you do not touch a phone. You do not touch keys. This will give you a new charge. And I mean more time added onto your sentence. And so I'm standing there and the phone is ringing. And the lieutenant looked at me, Lieutenant Baker, and she said, "Answer the phone." I said, "I'm not touching that, you answer the phone." And we got to arguing about it. And she said, "Listen, that is your job." I said, "Departmental rules, so forth and so forth, said I can't touch that phone." And so that was my first awakening of when I realized how disconnected I was from reality. And so that helped. That was the first thing that really started breaking the mold. One thing I can say about Kewanee is that they give you the platform to do what it is that you choose to do. Like, I was one of those guys, we all came down there, the pandemic shut everything down, we were bitter, we were mad, we were like, "Oh, this ain't what you told us." But the staff pushed back and was like, "Okay, well, what is it that you want to do? Write up a proposal." A lot of guys don't know how to do that. As you see in the clip, a lot of guys don't even know how to do a resume. And so we had to share our skill set with one another and start making proposals, start asking for the things that we wanted. And they started giving them to us. Now, fast forward to last year, they started an initiative, a program called Day Release. This program, the idea of, Warden Carruthers, Jennifer Perry, Director Jeffries, and so forth, the idea was to take us who were still incarcerated and allow us to work real jobs outside of the facility in the town for real wages. Now, I fought hard against this. I refused. I was going to work release. I wasn't trying to hear it. But the relationship that I had with Warden Carruthers for 20 years, he was like, "Look, this would be good for us, good for you. I think you need this." So, all right, I submitted. I went ahead and went with it. Hubris, arrogance, whatever, you think you're ready. We all think we're ready on the other side of that fence because you're like, okay, I've been doing everything I'm supposed to. But what you don't count on, and what you probably saw in this documentary, is that emotionally I was still an 18-year-old kid in a 42-year-old body. I did not expect that, and I wasn't ready for that. Because you think, okay, I survived the violence. I survived all of the things that prison had to offer. I'm tough. I made it. I'm an adult. I've been doing this. But you forget that your life was stopped and stunted at the time that you were impacted, that you got incarcerated. And you didn't do the normal things that a normal 21-year-old would do, a 25-year-old would do. Dating, oh my God. Going to a bar. Like, these are things that we didn't experience. And so when they took me out in the van on the first day, I was okay driving there. We get to the cemetery where we were stationed to work at, and the first thing I saw, I said, bro, it's a high school right there. I'm terrified, because I'm like, it's kids. Like, I'm a convicted murderer. I'm not supposed to be right here this close to society. They're like, no, you're okay. But you have to understand that inside of corrections, you feel like you're against society. Society is the antithesis. You're the enemy. You're not supposed to feel comfortable. You're not supposed to feel safe. People look at you as like the mark of Cain. You're the enemy. And so when I got out there and I was like, oh my God, it hit me. And I literally broke down right there. And, I really can't explain how much it hit me, but all the tough guy, all the ego went right out the window. And I realized then that this was something that really, helped.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, in part of during the times when I was pre-interviewing or interviewing people trying to find the right individuals for this documentary series, a number of guys I talked to about Kewanee, they were saying that there's so many people, so many inmates that are trying to get to Kewanee because of the preparation for getting them ready for when they're released. What I would like to ask to either Tawana or Paul, your experience with being behind those bars, being in the facility. And Tawana, most of yours were spent in Cook County, yes. Cook County Jail. Paul, where you also spent time in Georgia. Can you all talk a little bit about the experience that you all had with being in those different facilities?
So y'all gonna look down here, right?
Yeah, ladies first.
Well, for me, Mario, being in 26 in California, it really humbled me. It was a humiliating experience. And to be subjected to that type of control, you have to be submissive to somebody else when you use the bathroom, when you wash up. Whenever you want to do anything that we should normally be able to do, you got to submit to somebody else and ask like you're a child or like you're somebody's property, because that's how I felt being in that place. And the experience, even though it was only in the Cook County Jail, the effects are still the same. Like Nicholas talked about, the different barriers, getting connected back to your feelings and emotion and adapting to society to look at, hey, I'm free. But are we really free? We physically rehabilitated once we release, but it's in that mental that we have not set ourselves free because we haven't been taught or given those type of skills. So it was an experience that told me that I don't like being somebody's property. So what do I need to do to set myself free? And if you have never been given the skills, you've never been given the opportunity, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Paul, you want to weigh in on that at all?
For me, it's just a little bit different. Not much. I mean, pretty much the same experience. When you come out, even before you come out, there's kind of a feeling of hopelessness a little bit because for me, I was worried about even though I still was living at home, basically, just all the other factors that come in, with the stigmas and stuff, and really having to prepare yourself in prison before you get out. There's a lot. I mean, again, it's a difficult thing to try to get ahead in prison when there's all this craziness going on around you. short of staff, whatever's going on, and you know, canceling classes because there's gang fights and stuff. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous, but you know, it's because, you know, we just need to treat people better. But yeah, it was rough. Like I said, it was rough getting out, and I've been out just a little bit longer than he has. It's been about 11 months. I'm sorry, about a year and 1 month, and you know, it's still an adjustment. You know, but things always get better eventually. So.
Nneka, is there anything you wanted to add to that before we move on to the next?
I want to be, I guess, careful about how I answer that question. I think your question was, like, should we have more facilities like Kewanee? And what I will say is that we don't need more facilities. We need the facilities that we have to treat people with the dignity and the respect and the humanity that we see in the clip with Kewanee. But the numbers that you put on the screen in the beginning with the number of people incarcerated, the recidivism rates, like for me, that's an indication that we need to have life skills training for people in community before we even get to the point of someone being arrested and convicted of a charge. And so I don't think we need more facilities like Kewanee. I think we need more humanity, more resources, and more opportunity in Black and brown communities. And I think that the facilities that we have really have to look at how they are treating the people who are incarcerated as well as the staff in a way that is similar to Kewanee, so when people get out, they stay out, and we can reduce these numbers.
Great, thank you for that. And that's why we're here, right? This is what we want to hear. So, in some of the research that I pulled from several anti-recidivism organizations, what they're saying is that the 5 major challenges faced by returning citizens, and we cover a lot of these in the documentary series: housing, employment, finances, lack of support, and mental health. I would like to, any one of you want to jump in and talk about any of those issues. I'm gonna go to you, Nicholas, because I'm already in trouble with you, so why not? And part of Nicholas's story that you'll see in the documentary is him being out for a very short time, and he had to figure out where he was going to live. So he was fortunate enough where he had a close friend who allowed him to stay there for a short time, but then also part of the documentary, he was able to find housing within a month or 2 months?
Yeah, it was the first 4 weeks.
First 4 weeks. Yeah. So we all know, I mean, that's great, but that's not normal, I think it's safe to say.
No, that's absolutely
So why don't you talk about that experience a little bit, if you can?
Yeah, again, a lot of the things that I've done thus far are the exception. Again, I had to give myself this chance pre-release. Again, it comes with networking, knowing what it is that you need to do, asking for help. I came home and I had some money saved up, but that really, it doesn't even matter, because I even told one landlord, I was like, hey, I'll give you $3,000 right now just to let me move in. Rent is only $900. And they was like, yeah, we don't know about that. You don't have 3 months worth of pay stubs. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're gonna play this game. So you don't wanna use the Class X against me or the felony against me, but my work history. I said, well, I do have a work history. Kewanee, I worked out there for 7 months. Yes, really, you didn't really make enough for us to trust that you can. And I was like, really? So thankfully I was able to find, through my own due diligence, to find suitable housing that I could afford. And the problem came with the fact that, obviously out here bills and everything costs. You all know this. So I'm learning this. Insurance, gas, everything costs. So I was like, I can't keep hemorrhaging money. I have to get a job. thankfully, Ricky Hamilton, Michael Cannon, they came picked me up as soon as they found out I was released. Good guys. They was like, hey, we're going to make it right for you. And they found me temporary work. But again, this is like, I'm still struggling to find full-time employment because all of these companies that say that they're felon-friendly really aren't felon-friendly. I've been on interviews where they're taking me and they're like, you're great, until they pull the background and they're like, yeah, we can't have you around us.
Yeah, so, I mean, you mentioned employment, which was going to be where I was going next. So I would love for you all to just talk about the challenges of finding jobs. I mean, again, that's one of the topics that we cover in the documentary because it is. I think it's at the top of the list. So can you all talk about the experiences with employment and struggling to find work?
Well, my struggle with finding work, after 17 years of my record supposedly being wiped out, even though I was certified as a CNA and I went for the job. And I was there for a while because I put on the application in the box when it asks, we'll discuss an interview. And I don't know if they looked at it, I don't know what they did, but when it came out that one of the supervisors went to look at my file and took it to the head supervisors, and then they walked me out of the door. And then come to find out that there was other people there with felonies, it just was me. So saying that, even though we may have been out for periods of time, it still doesn't matter. That barrier still is a thing that we have to overcome. It's a number that pop up on us faster than our Social Security number, and we already know the tracking number, right? It never goes away. I faced another barrier like 5 years ago with employment, where I'm certified to work with DCFS. But because of my background, they asked me. I said, we'll discuss an interview, and I let them know who I was. That's who I was, but here's who's sitting before you now. This is what you get. I will not explain it again. I've already forgiven me. I'm not going to allow you to take me through the recall of the experience and keep reliving something that's tormented me. I've let it go, and wind up, they gave me an opportunity to work with DCFS, and I stayed there for like 3 years. I did my internship for my master's, and from there is where I began to get open doors, because before then, a single mom with 2 sons had never worked a job over $8 an hour. That was a problem, because I had to choose, is I'm gonna pay the bill, or am I gonna buy my baby some shoes? Am I gonna take my kids out for recreation, or do I gotta sacrifice to pay the light bill? So those things never go away.
So at some point you decided you were going to create your own opportunities, all right? I mean, so you're currently working on your second book? Well,
Mario just can't hold no secrets.
Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. Let's edit that out. Okay. But no, so you decided you were going to write a book, and you created your own nonprofit. Kind of at what point did you decide that you were going to create your own opportunities?
When I got sick and tired of hitting those doors. I got sick and tired of getting that you can only live within this income bracket. It doesn't matter what your skill set is. Even though I have a lot of degrees and certifications, because I wanted to be marketable, because I was tired of hitting those barriers and those doors. So some doors got to open further than the next one. If you keep on making yourself marketable and keep putting your story out there, because you are your story. Let's just say that. We are our story. We are our brand. We are the one that sells us to the highest bidder. And if we don't have the voice or the skill set to know that, hey, I ain't settling for that. Yes, I made this mistake, but I'm not going to keep paying for who I was. Who you currently see before me, give me the opportunity and I'll show you who I am. Opening the doors for me to take that opportunity is because I didn't want to struggle like that no more with my children. You know, I had my 3rd child, and it didn't get easier because, like I said, my tracking number still shows up. And to give myself an opportunity to open that non-for-profit, I worked for that lady 2.5 years and ran her non-for-profit and didn't realize that I had the skill set. But it was necessary for me to go through that Because then after she let me go, that's when the vision came. And then the footwork came. And then I looked up 8 months, it was a non-for-profit, because every dot that was connected through God opened the door for the non-for-profit to come to life. And the vision has been alive almost 5 years, make June the 6th.
Nice. Paul and Nneka, I would like to just kind of quickly, before we move on to the next subject, is to have the two of you kind of, you want to speak on, on employment, housing, finances, mental health, anything you all want to share about that?
Yeah. For me, out of those things for the recidivism, really it was the mental health is the most important part, even before you get out of prison, because if and it's hard to get mentally prepared in prison, because again, there's all these things going on, but the mental health, and then there's not a lot of counselors, to help people, and maybe you get an officer every once in a while, but as far as that goes, it's like, it's just, it's frustrating, because if there were more programs and more people that actually cared, they could probably change more lives in there.
Yeah, I'll speak to the mental health part first, and then my thought on the 5 areas that you mentioned. Having worked in corrections for about 11 years, I can say that everyone who has been touched by corrections, people incarcerated and staff, are dealing with an overwhelming amount of trauma. I think the same is true for law enforcement as a whole. And understanding that, and that people are coming in with high prevalence rates of trauma, we really need more mental health services in community so that we can begin to heal from the wounds that we're experiencing when we experience them. So I guess my role on this panel is to really talk about like what we need in community so we can get ourselves out of this mess that we're in now. Being the world's leading entity in incarceration. And then I think that the thing that stands out for me in the 5 areas you mentioned is, yes, we need shifts in policies and practices in these areas. Like I saw my brother Marlon Chamberlain come in, Fully Free campaign. They're working on changing these policies and these laws. We also need connection, and I know we've spoken about this, I think, in various forms through the documentaries and through the talks, but connection to real people who have experienced this so we can change the narrative of what this system really does to people. And then lastly, I think we really need a shift in how we think about incarceration and the people impacted by incarceration. And for me, that starts in real tangible ways. It starts with language we use. Like you and I had a conversation before we came on. Like, I want us to think about the use of the word inmate and the use of the word offender or addict, because we're more than that, right? We are people who have been impacted by a system. And so I think that the more that we begin to tell the full story of who we are as people, the more that we can see that we're deserving of a system that treats us better and that is not focused on punishment, but one focused on healing.
Great. That's why we asked her to come. Thank you. So I want to keep us on time because I promised I would get you all out of here by 9:15. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually skip a piece just because we got to stay on time. What I want to talk about is the impact of being incarcerated, the impact it has on kids and your family. As part of Tawana's story, that was a big part of her story. And she did a great job with explaining it or talking about it in her story. But how you saw, well, you know what, we have a clip, so it's just for me to try to explain it. But what I will say before we roll the clip is that children whose parents are involved in the criminal justice system, in particular, they face a host of challenges and difficulties: psychological strain, antisocial behavior, suspension or expulsion from school, economic hardship, and criminal activity. Now, according to the National Institute of Justice, children of incarcerated parents are on average 6 times more likely to become incarcerated themselves. So, in saying that, let's look at the clip from Tawana's story, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about this issue.
Most of my cases were because I was selling a controlled substance. PCP is considered as attempt murder. And because I was high, it allowed my response to things to be slow. So the police always, got their way, because I wasn't me. My kids was gone 3 years. I'll never forget it. They gave them back to me September 29th, 1999. December 3rd, I was high again. Oh, Katie, I don't know how this ponytail can come out, but Mama got you. For me, that breaking point, it was me sick and tired of being tired of disappointing my children. One day I wasn't high and I looked in their face. I really saw their soul and what I was doing to them. Really? Mama, be still. I am being still, Mama. I didn't understand that every time I got high, my children did too. Every time I got incarcerated, my children did too. Every time I didn't show up, they missed out too. So I was repeating the cycle that was done to me and didn't even know it. Breaking a cycle means you have to identify it. You gotta be willing to walk through the process, and you gotta do the work necessary to stay free of it. I can't afford to repeat a 20-year addiction. I don't got 20 more years left in me. I don't have 20 more years of in and out of jail. I don't have 20 more years of gang banging, selling drugs, doing everything under the sun that I'm big and bad enough to do, and then call it in the morning, hey, I'm going to see Jesus. No, sir.
I just realized that this is the first time that you all are seeing these clips. So that's why we're getting the reaction that we're getting. So you all, you didn't even look at the show at the docs earlier today. So they did go live. So you could, at any point, what is it? WTTW.com/firsthand? Right. So you can watch, again, the 5 stories or the 5 talks at any point. Actually, what I would recommend, I'm going to get into this, but write it on Post-it notes and just stick it like on your neighbor's cars. WTTW.com/firsthand. She's shaking her head like no. So, Tawana, I would like to start with you. Talk to us about the impact. I mean, we just saw the clip, but I would like for you to elaborate a little bit more.
Wow, that thing got me emotional. It's okay. Whew. To see something like that and sit here now, so I made it out. 1 million didn't make it. I just happened to be one of the ones who did. And I'm grateful. Speaking to that, the impact of me going in and out of my children's life in addiction, having control of me, it's still today. Even though I've been out 18 years, it's still a struggle to stay out and to keep my kids where they see a role model, something different than what I saw growing up. That is my motivation to never, ever look back and say, oh, I want to go back. No, just a reminder to never go back. The impact of being to the lowest level in life, and then how to rebuild from the broken place to rebuild something beautiful. Every day it's a struggle. It's a struggle to show my kids that, hey, this is where we came from, but this is not where we're gonna stay. This is not where we're landing. This is not our destiny. So every day, the impact of what you did, the stigma never leaves you. Poverty mindset, that's a choice. You have to change things. When you remove something negative, you got to replace it with something positive daily in order to overcome the impact, because the impact is never going to change. It's you that got to change. It's the way you look at it, the way you respond to it, and the way you show up to face it, because you have to face it. You can't go around it. I'm not high no more. The raw feelings I have to deal with, hey, the rejection of society. I have to deal with the rejection of people not accepting, who you were. Because I tell it from the mountaintop, that's who I was. Who you meet now is the makeover. I take that as my proclamation, and I stand firmly and unapologetically about it. Yes, this is what happened to me, but this is not what I'm going to let it do to me. And that's how I continue to move past the stigma of the different barriers, the obstacles, and, my children being returned home in '99, but the impact is still real because I have a son that repeated the cycle. So when children are exposed to something like that, please know that it's likely that it's going to happen to them. The only thing you can do, what? Continue to be the thing before them. That is the change. The change they see at home is the change they'll always remember.
Good, good, good. Nneka, Paul, Nicholas, want to weigh in on impact of...
You want me to follow up behind that?
No, either one of you. Just
Take
about
away,
the impact.
Well, as far as like impact on family, when I got locked up, I was already divorced, and so I didn't have really good communication with my kids, but it was something that I had asked God to help me with. And throughout my incarceration, I was able to stay in touch with them, off and on. It's hard because all my kids have grandkids, or have their own kids, so I've got grandkids. And, having to regain trust and things like that and build back a relationship is difficult. There's barriers, but it's nothing that can't be overcome. You know what I mean? And it can be frustrating because I just want to try to do the next right thing in my life, and then maybe try to help someone else out in the way. And when it comes to my kids, I want to be a good dad. I don't think there's anybody that had a kid that would ever say they didn't want to be a good parent. But I was a horrible parent, and I'm just trying to do what I can today to try to mend that relationship and trust God to help that as well. I make my steps, and I just keep trusting.
Good. Okay.
I want to say something.
Oh, I want you to, absolutely.
I want to also emphasize that our children whose parents have been or are incarcerated aren't doomed. Like they're not set up for a life of incarceration or substance use, but they are at increased risk. Like we have to acknowledge that. I sit before you as a person whose father was incarcerated. And so there is a different side to the story. And what we have to do as all of us and leaders in our communities is recognize that we can help shift that for children. We can show up as positive adults in their lives. We can, especially system leaders, make sure that people who are incarcerated can maintain positive connections with their children. And we spoke about the disconnection that oftentimes happen because of incarceration. Like we have to really push carceral institutions to change the way they operate so that family engagement and family connection is a priority, because that is going to help everyone involved, the children, the people incarcerated, as well as the staff. And so there are things that we as community members can do to shift what is at increased likelihood, but also making sure our kids know that it's not something to be ashamed of and they're not doomed.
Great. Yep. Yep. Nicholas.
It's not gonna leave me alone, huh?
Yeah. So I mean, your mother, who's a part of the story.
Yeah. Well, I'm an only child, and so obviously this was kind of heart-wrenching for her. Thankfully, she's still there. As you'll see in the documentary, she's very tough, very unyielding. So she really didn't want to leave me because she's in Mississippi. So she was like, I'm not leaving until I know that you're okay. Again, thankfully, from Candor Enterprises, the guys that took me on, Ricky Hamilton and Michael Cannon, I was able to kind of get my position solidified and going to what Dr. Nneka Salika is speaking to. It's about, like she said, helping the youth. And so we took something from our community, and I'm talking about those of us that committed these crimes. We stole something from the soul of our community. And that's something that we have to give back because we are chasing after redemption. And this is what people don't get. That comes with payment. That comes at a cost. And we have to pay that cost. And so returning citizens, guys like us, especially those that have family members, children that are impacted, like she said, how can we make the environment better for them so that they don't have to suffer the consequences of our actions? Because they're growing up in an economically deprived environment because we created that. And that's something that we have to ensure that doesn't happen to them by stepping out there, mentoring these kids, giving them the mental health and being the standard that they see, not the gang members on the street. And we're telling them like, hey, I've been there. I've done that, suffered for it. Please don't do that. And I'm showing you a better way. I'm showing you where I failed at, and I'm showing you where I'm succeeding at. That's why men like us and women like us are running out here doing what we're doing, standing on the front lines. We're not asking anybody who hasn't been impacted to stand out there in front of the bullets and the beatings and the violence. We'll do that, but we need your support. So how do you think we feel if, on one hand, you're telling us to be better, you're telling us to jump through the hoops, but you're not giving us the hoops to jump through? We're willing to do it. You know, I worked for a cemetery while I was in prison. Tried to get a job to work for a cemetery out here, and they said, oh, you can't have that job. So I can't be around the living, and I can't be around the dead. So where's my place at in society? How am I supposed to help stop the violence with the youth if I have no position? You're not giving us the opportunity to save lives, to stop the impact, like she pointed out, from even happening. You want to stop the cycle of the Department of Corrections. You want to stop the problems that we're seeing in these areas that we're calling crime-ridden. Well, let's stop it before it happens, because that's the only way you will change anything, is to prevent it. The police are there for a purpose. They're a tool. They're there to do what? Stop the crime, but they're not being preventative, because that's not what they do. We need more preventative measures. You're talking about public safety. That's a community thing. That's not just a police thing. That's you, that's us, that's everybody. We're neighbors. So why not let us help you be better neighbors? Help us to be better neighbors. Help us to help you make your environment safe. My aunt, she should be able to sit out on her porch without having to worry about somebody coming up there doing something to her. I'm gonna ensure that by every day that I wake up, to ensure that her environment is safe, your environment is safe, every day. If that means whether I get paid for it or not, I'm there. And the men that represent Candor Enterprises and Dr. Nakia and everybody, and even you, Mario, everything that we do is about helping one another. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's how we stop the cycle, so that her son doesn't have to go to prison and think that he's hopeless and it's the end of his life. Mm-hmm. But
yeah. Well said, man. Well said. Well said. Wow. So the hardest thing about this is that I got to stay on schedule. Because, no. So what I want to do is I want to give you all an opportunity to ask questions, because there's so many things that we can talk about, more questions that I have, but I am skipping over the script because I got to stay on schedule. So what I would like to do is, I'm sure you all have questions. Hopefully you have questions, right? So we have someone who's going to bring a microphone. So basically, if you just raise your hand, and any questions for any of myself, or hopefully not me, but any of our 4 guests, feel free to ask any questions. Anybody? Okay.
Yeah, come on.
I'm sorry, I guess, yeah, so we'll have you all actually go to the microphone.
Okay, I know you don't want to talk anymore, but the question is, you said a lot of great stuff. So what is it that we can actually do? Like, what are the things you've identified so far that the people in the audience can actually, steps that they can take concretely? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, a lot of times, like you know me, you personally know me, but an employer may not personally know me. Someone who lives next door to you may not personally know me. So they have their own skepticisms, understandably so. People who don't know you, they have this fear, they have this, these stereotypes going through their brain. So have these talks with them. Help them to understand that we are not the danger that you see on these movies, Shawshank Redemption and all these other movies that you have playing in your head. Help us to change the narrative. Help us to get out there so that way people are like, okay, this guy is trustworthy. We can help these people to help us. Because again, you have to think, like when the Department of Corrections put me outside, bro, somebody could have lost their job. All it took was for me to run or grab somebody or pick something up. Mm-hmm. But they entrusted that in me. Just like when we were talking with John Esposito that day. It was like, how do you gain the trust when you're not given the opportunity for that? So we're asking you, give us a chance before you say, no, I'm not gonna hire you because you're a convicted murderer. Okay, well, I was 18. I'm not still 18. Like, how long, like she said, how long are you gonna hold that against us? Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, good, thanks. Any other questions? Okay.
I get the idea that we are more than the worst thing we've ever done. You are the warden of a prison. That cannot be traumatizing. We live in a culture where we don't talk about trauma. How do we get to a place where we're not pretending like it's not real, because it's very real?
Good question.
I want to make sure I understood your question correctly, or your statement. You said as the warden, it was not traumatizing?
It was, I can't imagine that it's not, it must be very
yes.
traumatizing.
Thank you for
The
that.
staff,
I just wanted to.
Man, I apologize if I was a little bit goofball there, but you know what I mean? I know that, of course, it's traumatizing to the people that are returning citizens, but I also imagine on the staff side and leading that side, you walk in those walls every day, you're suffering. And we don't live in a culture that seems to value talking about what we go through. We're all supposed to pretend it didn't happen. How do you process your trauma?
You're absolutely right. I mean, telling the real story is where it starts. And yes, staff working in these systems are traumatized. They go in and out of these systems every day, and they see some things that no one should ever see. And they hear some of the things that no one should ever hear. And the only way that I myself learned how to survive it was to remove myself from my own humanity. I had to close my eyes sometimes to what was in front of me in order to just get through the day. And I know that happens in many staff who work in these systems. Yet you're right, we don't talk about it. We only hear one side of the story, and that story is very real. The story is that incarceration and carceral facilities are very traumatizing to people who are incarcerated. But the staff need to start speaking up too, and saying that they're having a hard time sleeping at night. They are drinking themselves into a coma. They have a high rate of divorce. They have thoughts of suicide, yet they're not given those opportunities and those spaces where they can be vulnerable and really push to be vulnerable. And for me, that starts with the leadership. The leadership has to open up conversations and spaces for people to have those discussions. And we also need to have them, I think, in spaces like this is helpful, but inside of institutions as well, so that collectively all of these groups can shift what's happening in the systems.
Another question? Oh, okay.
My question is, with this documentary coming out, what message do you want or do you hope that society will get? And how do you all deal with the effect of being rejected?
You got us good with that one. Yeah.
I'll start with the message, and then hopefully we'll hear from the people that I know I want to hear from. The message is that incarceration can't be the answer. Incarceration in this country is our solution to every societal ill that there is. And what we are doing by incarcerating all of our ills and in trying to incarcerate our way out of them is creating more harm. And it's creating more harm to not just the people who sit on this stage, but to everyone. And I want all of us to recognize that so that we can push our elected officials and we can push the people we put in positions of power to think beyond what is in front of them right now and open up space for us to have something better, something that we deserve. And that's, again, like, to me, that starts with healing. And so I think this, the purpose of these talks and these documentaries is to really show that that impact is real and it doesn't stop at the correctional facility. It is in all of our neighborhoods and all of our homes.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, wow. I don't even know where to start with that. I just know that for me, dealing with rejection is something I've dealt with a long time, even before the drugs or anything ever happened. You know, you could deal with rejection at home. You can deal with rejection within your neighborhood, employment, but dealing with rejection now, I've gained some tools. I had to relearn how to not take other people's opinion offensive. I had to learn my own opinion and create myself in a way that, yes, I heard what you said, but I don't receive it. Meaning that I acknowledged what you've said, but I have already prepared myself through getting up in the morning and meditating for the woman that I want to show up in the world. And with that being said, I say to me, Tawana, you are whole, you are beautiful, you are complete. I affirmate myself and affirm who I am, so when I step outside my door, I can represent myself and be her, because I've already prepared her mentally, spiritually, and emotionally for whatever's about to happen. When you get to a certain point of rejection being so familiar, you'll normalize yourself that it's okay, but that is not okay, because rejection will take you to a dark place that you may not find your way out, because you'll think that you're always less and you'll dummy down and shrink into a box to gain acceptance of people just because you don't know who you are. Today I know who I am, so rejection is just a part of the growth process of any process, whether we was incarcerated or not. Rejection happens on a day-to-day basis. It's just the way we respond to things, that we take it personal. So today, rejection is just what it is, and today I'm just who I am. What's wrong with it?
You all have anything to add? No? Okay. We have a few more, so I'm gonna keep so we can get to some of the other questions. So so we'll do it here, and then we'll go over to Mary, and then yeah, okay.
Right? Hi, hello. This question actually is specifically for you, Tawana. So, referencing back to that slide that was up there in the beginning, we saw that, you know, women by numbers make up smaller portions in our populations than men. But can you sort of talk about some of these really specific barriers to women when we talk about reentry, some of the stigma you feel like you face that your male peers wouldn't have faced or didn't face?
First of all, I had 2 children. It's very different when you are the lifeline for people that's depending on you for life. It's very different when you have been away from your children and then they're giving back to you and they say, okay, you go home, you make a way for them and raise them. But what do I have? Those are the barriers. Where's the finances? Where's the job? Where's the resources to direct me to, hey, this place will get you from A, and then you go to A gonna get you to B, and C will be the employment. Where are those things located? You know, yes, they have programs, but we have to fit a certain criteria in order to get those services. Yes, a lot of programs are available, but would almost like it's limited. You have to meet something in order to get something. So a lot of barriers I face, low self-esteem, insecurity, feeling as a failure as a mom. I'm talking about the things that people don't talk about. Those are things that's hidden. I gotta be this superwoman before the kids, then at night I gotta cry because it feel like mama failed. She couldn't put no food on the table. She couldn't get your hair cut after you done grow the whole bush on your head. You know, those are the different things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And even though, you know, things get better as time goes on, it's still a barrier because you still have to rebuild from that broken place. See, I allowed myself to go through therapy because I needed to heal from the incarcerated mind. I had to heal from the barriers and the trauma and the neglect I endured myself as a child. I had to deal with why I needed to use drugs in order to cope with life and be able to show up and being present in my own skin, right? I had to deal with those barriers. They're not gone. They're still there. I just face them every day with a smile. Because if I put one foot in front of the other and make a step, I ain't got to worry about going back. I'm talking about in the other direction. So the barriers is so many. Most of all, it's the mental stability. You have to maintain your mind. You have to always remember when you remove something negative, you got to replace it with something positive because the mind will shift back to the comfort place of what it's familiar with. The unknown will scare you because you've never seen nobody in your neighborhood. You have never seen a family member. Your friends have not elevated to this level. So it's like, okay, I don't fit there because I don't know where I belong. My identity got lost somewhere in the barriers that I had to face. My identity got lost somewhere in me being incarcerated. My identity got lost during my addiction and gang banging and prostitution and things like that. So you gotta take on something different. Look at yourself in a different view.
I think we have time probably for 2 more questions. So I want to do Mary, and then we'll do your question. And then we'll see if we have time for maybe one more. Well, I got it. Yeah, I got you.
Hi, my name's Mary, and my son is Paul, and he was incarcerated in Georgia. And one thing that I learned, he was at 3 different prisons and 2 different jails. And there was one prison that he was at was Walker, okay? And it's something like you were talking about, the program. And one thing I have to say is that, you know, once they're incarcerated, that's it. I mean, I know they're in there, but there's no programs. There's nothing happening inside to help them. And then Walker was different. They had family day. You worked 2 times a year. The whole family came. They brought food from the outside. Everybody sat together. I mean, there was programs. There was religious programs. There was AA programs, CA programs. I mean, all of them, okay? The only program they didn't have, and I'm not sure here in Illinois, okay, but we started the first essay program in Georgia. And the guy who runs it in Tennessee did not think that could happen. And it's going on at Walker. That's the only prison. No other programs. They don't want to get any programs going on any place to make people better. What can we do, okay, on our part to help to let people see that if you have them incarcerated and you're not giving them any help to overcome whatever their, you know, addictions are or whatever, then we're just doing nothing. They're just sitting there and that's it. What can we do to help that happen?
I felt Mary looking at me, so I'm going to answer that question. You know, I do believe that there is an increase in an appetite from correctional administrators to increase programming because they see that what they have been doing is not working. We at Chicago Beyond started working with correctional administrators across the country and getting them to implement more resources and programs for people incarcerated and staff. And I know that in order for them to do that, they are going to need people from the community who have these skills and have the time and the ability to volunteer to come into these facilities to offer those resources. And so when you ask what can we do, I would say volunteer. The services, the needs are plenty, the services are few, and everyone in here has something to offer. And if you connect with the Illinois Department of Corrections or connect with the Cook County Sheriff's Office here in Chicago, I do believe that together we can begin to make a difference so that we can implement some quality programming for both groups.
Okay, so I have 60 seconds to get your question in and a response.
It's actually in regards to programming as well. So there's tons of programs that are available, but specifically, is there any program that you guys feel is not created or something that you were missing that that's a need for the community?
30-second response.
Well, my next project is to get, I want to get a building where mothers will be able to visit their children while incarcerated. That was one of the barriers that I had, and I still have with my children, even though they've been home 20 years. So being able to visit their mom and be able to see them, I think it'll reduce the barriers and the adverse childhood experience of traumatizing them to the point where, you know, mental illness comes in, addiction, and then the vicious cycle all over again being repeated.
All right. Thank you all so very much. Hopefully this was helpful and you all were able to learn something by being part of this audience. Again, where can you see? WTTW.com/ there you go. I want to give thanks to our amazing crew that we had working on this evening, but also the crew that put this together. Ann Gleason and Dan Protest are the executive producers. I also want to thank our directors, Rosita Cox, Pat Odom, myself, Teresa White, who's in the audience, Donna Wilson. We also have our Edwin Diaz, Ben Kolick, Joshua Jackson, Sam Wrong, Kyle Thomas, Wayne Kumango, Alana, Schmeltler, I know I'm butchering these names, Deshaun Simpson, Matt Taylor, Sean Duffy. I also want to say, so we have Kyle Hilbert, who is one of our subjects. Kyle, raise your hand. So Kyle is here. I don't know if Marcelo is here. Marcelo D. Jesus Velasquez. He's also one of our other subjects. So thank you to them. And thank you to our panel, Tawana, Nicholas, Paul, Nneka. Before we close, I want to thank Judith McCrae. She was the producer of the 5 talks. I don't know if she's here. And Tim Russell, who's VP of Community Engagement and DEI here at the WTTW. And all of our supporters. Lastly, Nicholas has started a clothing line. And he went out and got business cards. And actually, the shirt that he has on is one of his items. So he has business cards for whomever wants to get more information about his company. So thank you all so very much. We really appreciate it. Again, take a look and WTTW.com/firsthand. I'm sorry, part 2? So yes, again, thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. Thanks.